All right, we're back in session. Do we have like a schedule?
No, what I thought we would do is we'll just start at page 1. We'll run through and just kind of give you the highlights of the changes, make sure you're good with those. And then if you're not, we'll have discussion.
Okay.
So far, I have had the Sheriff's Office contact us, Road and Bridge, well, Public Works, they're both good with their budgets, assuming you make no changes. And then I talked to Anita. She was a little concerned about a line item in the appraiser's budget, so we can address that. And those are the only ones I've talked to. So
Public Works?
Mm-hmm. And then
And the sheriff.
yeah.
And then the assessor's office
Yeah.
had some questions.
Yeah.
Theirs is pretty easy.
Yeah, hers will be easy. And then have you talked to anybody?
No,
Okay.
they were just asking for saying thank you.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, does that sound like a plan? Okay. Clerk's budget. I don't believe we made any changes other than the market adjustment. Oh, when you get to the capital item, we moved the air ballots and put those into PILT. And that's 28,000 for 5 of them.
The what? The air ballot, the
Yeah.
auto marks, or whatever they
Air
are.
ballots.
The-
You're only buying 5 of them?
They're the printers
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah.
print out the
Printers.
ballots on
Yeah,
demand type
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were talking little handheld
Oh,
ones.
yeah.
Yeah.
No. So we took out 28,000 there to put into
Pilt.
PILT.
So if we
Yeah.
do get it, we can use it out of pilt.
Yep.
Okay.
Does that look okay?
Yes.
I don't want to rush you, so you tell me when
I
you're...
don't have anything that, I looked through it last night and I already know kind of what.
Okay. Assessor's budget, the only change we made was we split the assessor, chief deputy, and management assistant 50-50. Instead of the prior year, it was 75-25.
Yeah.
And we took postage down from the assessor's request. And then a couple of other travel and education, we just put, we put travel and education in there. But no earth-shattering changes there.
Okay. Is that where they wanted that master's touch was in the appraiser's
No,
line item?
that'll be
in the-
appraiser, not assessor. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
We do have in there retirement payout also.
Okay.
When did you want to talk about revenue? After we go through this?
We can talk about revenue at any point, if it pertains to a specific department, but I was gonna talk about it kind of as we went, so for the departments that it,
So let's talk about revenue for
Okay.
the assessor then. How are you feeling projection-wise with, I know we talked about it a little bit this morning or a little bit yesterday with the car dealerships and everybody else doing some of the other things.
their revenue is definitely down.
I don't
Some of it-
know if it's-
Down for this year?
They're down for this year, and so I took projections down for next year also.
Okay.
The,
I think it might be take a little bit because
There's-
when I bought the wife's car in the winter,
uh-huh,
Cole Chevrolet and those guys didn't even know that there was the title work that you could even do. And they're just starting to figure out what's going on, so,
and only certain
Yeah.
dealers have been approved.
yes. And so it's one of those things that, while everybody's like, oh, everybody's gonna do it and it's gonna, there's
Yeah.
I think we need to be a little careful of not shocking the system too quick. But I
Yeah.
think this year will be your test year that'll really give you where it's going.
Yeah, I was just curious how you're dealing with that, what you were doing.
Luckily, I've been conservative in estimates anyways, so it didn't hit us too bad. But we knew, and I can't remember when I received this, but during assessors conferences, we knew in FY22 that there were fees that we were getting that they would be cutting in 23. So like online admin fees,
Yep.
we are no longer getting any of that money.
Okay.
And we knew about that this spring. In 24, we're not going to be receiving online admin fees, mail-in admin fees, vendor title portions and postage.
Okay.
So that's gonna be an even bigger hit.
Yeah.
So the nice thing is if we take it a little bit down now, see how that affects us. Take a little bit more down possibly next year. They do have, within the assessors group, they're actively trying to appeal to the state to not make as many cuts as they are. Anita had a information, well, not information request, but a data collection that they wanted certain numbers on things. So they're trying to, as an association, repeal some of those changes. So maybe we won't be hit as bad next year, but that was part of why we felt okay taking away that one vacant position and attritioning it.
Right.
Some of the staff isn't excited about that, but they're keeping up right now.
Well, that was my thought process as well, is we don't replace any positions because of the direction things are going.
Right. And then just.
But I haven't had any conversations to
Yeah.
substantiate that.
I think what you do is you put on like a hiring moratorium when they come open and
Assess.
see how they're going for next year, because the big problem is we had a lot of the revenues, I think, that are down due to we just didn't do it last year because we had queuing systems and stuff that people were going to power in Bingham and Oneida and Franklin and Caribou instead of doing it here. And so I wonder how much of that is actually due to the shifts or just poor customer service that now
Is coming around.
Well, I still think you're going to have a huge hit, because like you said, all those fees that we're losing, and I would just really start watching whether you need to hire those positions back or not.
Well, and I did call Candace and
Yeah.
talk to her about that when I was doing the revenue projections, because I said, I'm down in like boats and just the most random line items that weren't affected by this statutory change. I'm like, is that because people are going elsewhere? And she's like, probably. So it's kind of
Guaranteed.
been a double-edged sword. Now we get a new assessor in here in January, depending on what they choose to do with the queuing
Yep.
system. People might start to like it. They do some advertising of, we will have a walk-in line, or you can make an appointment, or you can do this, and maybe that'll turn some of this around. But it might not be a bad idea to continue to assess positions as they
I think a lot of
vacate.
people are going online.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier.
Yeah, that's why I'm just curious how you attack the revenue portion for over there, because,
Yeah.
and given that, I'm comfortable with what you're talking about.
Okay.
Well, and the big thing is you're gonna start seeing that revenue continue to drop. I know you just need to be ready for next year to say, hey,
Well,
hold
I
off
think-
on a position.
I think you're right on the hiring moratorium. We just kind of put a stall on that until we can evaluate where revenues are at and see.
Okay.
And we can address that as we get the clerk's, or the commission proposed done, is maybe just send out an email on that and say, due to unknown revenues, we're gonna treat you a little bit different
Mhm.
and have discussions.
Yeah,
Well,
So-
yeah, I think that's wise.
Okay. Good on assessors?
Mhm.
Okay. Treasurer's office, we didn't change anything. We took out $100 on the Facebook advertising for the treasurers because we put that into the PIO's
Okay.
consolidated amount. So that was the only change
and I think
from,
that was a smart decision all the way around. I think that was good.
I think it'll give her a little bit more control on things.
Yeah.
Well, we started talking about just some of in our staff meeting yesterday, about just some of the things that office, they did the parade for the 4th of July. Really, they need to do the parade and some marketing for the Bannock County Fair. You also have the homecoming. I mean, there's some other things like that as you start to think about it that are in Bannock County, that it's not huge amounts, but $10 here, $5 here, it will probably make it better that way.
We didn't need to fund anything out of the sheriff jail in current expense. We get to your budget. We took out the positions.
Okay.
We put 3,000 of the 10,000 in for subsidizing the intern. The remaining amounts are in county operations and HR.
Okay.
And then most of the changes were due to moving items to county operations or to HR. I'm trying to make sure that's the case in all of these. Most have notes. That 440 line, we did make a note on there, that's for staff and then national conferences for the commission.
Yeah.
And then yep, those were the only changes there. Look good? Don't want to rush yet.
No,
Give
I'm
you
good.
plenty of time to look. Coroner. So there's a couple things on this one. The $15,000 that we briefly talked about for an on-call deputy for backup. Tori may be in next week to talk about that. Jason was just trying to help come up with a solution, maybe to do the transports. When, say, one is at a conference or on vacation, you could allow that individual to do a transport in place of having
And your transports aren't going to be
the
very far.
educated individual. Well, this is before we get the pathology up.
Well, I mean, it should be hopefully this next fiscal year, so I
Right.
mean, you should see,
Right.
well, and, yeah.
His concern was that sometimes they need to communicate with whoever's doing the autopsy, and that wouldn't allow that. So there might be some dynamics to work out there.
Yeah.
The other item that we left in here, but I didn't catch until this weekend, was he has more money in here to lease an additional vehicle. I think that was if they got the third position. We might be able to take out,
Well, don't they have the old black?
yeah, so I think
Because
we can,
I thought we were
I
gonna.
think we can take this out.
I thought the lease vehicle was for that deputy.
So Tori's got a vehicle and JR has the black SUV.
Yeah. Because that one was on its last leg, and
So
I
is the
couldn't
lease for
remember-
JR?
I thought that's what we were doing,
Okay.
or we were gonna check the sheriff's office first and see if
Okay.
they had one. If they didn't have one, then there was some money there to do a lease,
Okay.
but that old Ford Explorer is getting to the point where
That
it's
thing's been around the block a few
gonna explode.
So that's an area that we probably
We
need to
have
look
a
at again.
conversation on, yes.
If you are good with getting a second vehicle for JR, then we're good to go. And we can leave it.
That's a discussion.
Yeah,
Okay.
we need to talk about that.
So I have that flagged as later discussion.
Okay.
Other than that, that's what he's,
Well, and then the other one to highlight there is the professional services.
Yeah.
I mean.
okay, that 84,000?
We've doubled, because this year we've put more money into that fund.
Right.
So
Next week, I will be presenting to you the expenditures through June.
Okay.
So I'll reevaluate that. That was one of the items that we were gonna bring up, was to see where he's at on that.
And that's another one that if we get this
Well, that's,
Right.
forensic done,
those are funds then that
It'll be-
would go, that's what we're using, that's
it
your
won't be the
contract.
travel expenses and
Right.
everything else that go along with that. I mean.
Right. So we might need that this year, we may not. We'll reassess where they're at spending wise.
Yep.
Clerk of the District Court, we did make some adjustments in here. So this was where we had the court manager position that
Mhm.
Jason did not fill. What he opted to do is, if you look at that second salary line, that individual got a grade increase
Mm-hmm.
because they're taking over responsibilities. So what he's doing is, and this is split into two different departments. So right now we have Diane Kano, who is a
Mm-hmm.
court supervisor. These two individuals are going to take over lateral
Mm-hmm.
supervisory abilities, and they're just going to be over different sections of the areas downstairs and upstairs. And so he gave great adjustments to two individuals, but then replaced and added a new position as a senior admin assistant. And we only budgeted that for 6 months.
Okay.
If they don't need it in 6 months, then we won't fill it. But he wasn't sure how workflow was going to go, since this is still fairly new.
Yeah.
And the other position that took a great increase is in district court, so you'll see that when we get over there.
Okay.
On the retirement payout, do we have anybody in mind for that, or is it just generic potential?
We have a couple individuals that could potentially go.
Okay.
And I can, after this, if we want to go into executive session, I can share my retirement list with you, and we can talk about some of those potentials if you'd like.
I would like that.
Okay. Don't let us forget.
Can we do that? Did we notice it that we can do that? or-
Yeah, it's-
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
All of the budget
Personnel.
meetings are,
Personnel.
Yeah.
Thanks.
because we never know.
Perfect.
Okay, county operations. We just moved the individuals that were talked about and added $5,000 to subsidize an intern if needed. And then we moved all of the operating into here. I did adjust the IEC dues up because I have a cheat sheet that they send me around budget time, and there wasn't quite enough budgeted. So I took it up about $1,800. The other item that was adjusted is in the, oh, never mind, that is in the indigent budget. I'll bring that one up. There was a donation that we took out
Okay.
that you might want to know. We're on county operations, page 10. Then on the back page, or on the second page, we've got the juvenile contribution that's estimated. I think that might leave about 20,000. I did a quick calculation, but I wanted to leave a little bit of extra money just in case we have carryover that might affect. I don't think we will, but I'd rather have a little bit of extra money than you having to come up with some. The $1 million in potential litigation was $1.5 million, but we took 500 of that and put down into the grant match. And you guys, we talked about that when we did this discussion. And then we, of course, took down the event center funding contribution because they didn't need it all.
So you're saying they made or saved money?
They're not needing as much, yes.
Okay.
We
They're
also,
looking in a positive direction.
They had a positive improvement.
yes, we also took out $50,000 for the comfort case for the public defenders because that's no longer capital defense. So the
Yep.
reason we had it in general fund is because contributions or refunds back from the state were going in there. We're not going to have that anymore, so I threw it in the public defender's budget.
Yep.
We'll need to communicate that to them, but. Courthouse Grounds. We made a couple of changes, but we talked to Daniel about this prior to.
Okay.
If you look at the special projects, or building repairs, line 461, we put in 50,000 for all general maintenance. And then he will spend it accordingly, and put it in the correct line so that we can track where the money was spent. But we took out anything that was going to be kind of a special project and gave him a lump sum balance in the capital acquisition trust. And we gave him $250, I believe. Hang on. I can find that, just one second. Yeah, we gave him $250,000 in capital acquisition trust. So if he's going to do flooring or lighting or something like that, he'll just pay it out of that trust.
Okay.
He was good with that.
So if we decide to do something on 6th.
We will need to add budget authority for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. that's-
Unless 250 would be enough, but some of the projects that he had listed out in here was just for the courtrooms, the old jail, the Lander building, those different facilities. He's just going to prioritize and then spend accordingly. So if you think there is something we need to do on 6th,
Well, I'm just really curious if we put this juvenile center right there, closing that road off becomes more of a priority.
Yeah, we have to do
Okay.
some,
Than what
we'll have to do some,
it used to be.
okay.
you have the.
When we get down to that, do you want to just add, I mean, we're using cash forward, so we could just add whatever dollar amount you're thinking.
I-
Also have the court facility, or that we did the bathrooms in?
That was this,
Yeah.
yeah, that's capital
where-
acquisition.
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
use capital, that's just where I
Yeah.
take it out, if
Okay.
we need it, because we'd pour some concrete across like a sidewalk to cut
Okay.
the, you know.
Well, let's add to that then when we get to that point.
Just want
Okay.
to check that.
Okay.
I think it's gonna change.
Yeah, because if we've got budget authority and we don't need it, then we don't spend it.
Yeah,
But I'd rather have it there just in case, because that's
Yep.
not a fund that we can open for.
yep,
I did add utility line items for the anticipation of the teen assessment center.
okay.
That's probably more than we need because I put a year's worth. But,
Yeah,
so that was probably overkill now that I think about it.
Would you refresh my memory as to the contract services, line 740? Why did they ask for 95,000 and?
So, we dropped the 80, that's for the in-house cleaning. We dropped 80 into its own line item.
Okay.
So if you look right below that, I figured it would be a little more transparent and better tracking if we don't have that lumped in with the other line. That way we can get a cost analysis of if we are saving money or not.
Okay.
So we just put it in its own line.
Okay, thank you.
And then he had $20,000 for property acquisition for lawn equipment so that he could take over doing lawns. We put that into PIL as well.
okay.
We left contingency at 200. That can go up if you think we might need it.
No,
Ag extension, we didn't change anything. I may have given them no, we added $4,000, but that was to match revenue on, it's an outside checkbook line item that I booked the activity for.
that's other stuff that comes in on like 4-H and all that stuff, that checkbook?
4-H and ag extension.
Okay.
They have one in
Yep,
each.
okay.
And it's just the activity where they pay for the classes and that kind of
Yep.
stuff, but legally we have to,
Yep, we have to
Yep.
be, yep.
so. IT, let's see, when we got to the other expenses, I added, what did I add? Oh, we moved the capital from 900 to 815.
Okay,
That was all we did there. And I forgot to tell you, on your budget, it's either in county operations or commission, you pay for railroad leases,
mm-hmm.
and we added $2,500 because Kyle found out they have one.
What happens if we don't pay those leases?
His is actually one that we would need to pay because I believe he's got property on it. He's gonna be bringing that before the board.
Well, I'm just
in the next
saying, I
week
mean,
or two.
what are they gonna do?
The others are easements.
Is that the property there in Income? Right next to the railroad tracks? There's a building right there and store sands and stuff.
Could be.
Lease covering use of railroad property in McCammon.
Yep,
McCann.
Yeah,
Okay.
he sent me a copy of the lease. Because I'm like, oh, good, another lease to track.
Excitement level.
Let's see. Matt's budget, we took out the allocation amount which he wanted to use for retention stipends. And that was the only change we made to his three
yeah,
probation departments.
yeah,
So we left in there the senior PO merit in the appropriate departments where he's
Mhm.
paying. He's got, like, in the second one, the JCA program, he doesn't have anybody eligible,
mhm.
so he zeroed that out. And then same thing in the tobacco one.
Yeah,
He didn't ask for that, but those are all just salaries. Then we've got the Human Resources Department, newly established $2,700 for the subsidize an intern if he can find one, and then just some basic operating expenses.
yeah,
We might find that he might need to borrow some money from county operations if by chance $4,500 isn't enough.
We'll find out.
We will. Planning and zoning, we did none of the grade adjustments that Hal asked for. And then that allowed us to take away, he needed money if he needed to do new business cards. He's not going to need that, so that we were able to reduce that off. Other than that, the only other item we adjusted was, they want the surveyors back in planning and zoning. It was in there 2 years ago.
Mhm.
This year, they wanted it in the engineer's budget. Now it's easier if it's back in their budget because they're the ones signing off on it anyways.
Yeah.
I said, well, we shouldn't have moved it then, should we?
Fine. Well, we learned a lesson,
So,
though.
yeah.
Of who does the work and
So
what doesn't.
we also moved the revenue back into there too.
Okay.
So I believe that was, yeah, that was the only change we made really there. The next page, health insurance is in the trust in the back now. Special projects we got rid of and consolidated with maintenance. Share we consolidated with D6. Adult probation. I took out, in line 424, I took out the internet because that was attached to the Lander building.
Mhm.
So I put that in the Office of Conflict.
Okay.
And took out $500 in district court overage. Wait, not that. Where is it? Yeah, district court overage. I don't know why they had that in there. They shouldn't need that. So that was the only other adjustment.
So question, this is just kind of humorous. The operating supplies, you moved ammo and internet,
Oh,
so you dropped it $1,000.
that was the internet.
Oh, it's just the
So
internet,
internet
not
moved,
ammo.
internet moved to Office of Conflict. Sorry. There should be like a dash.
people
I
that
put
live in
a
that
comma
building.
in there, but.
That's going, oh, you gave some ammo
So
to
it's
the conflict
$2,500 for ammo,
defenders.
just
They might
that.
get into the Lander building.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we try to make the notes make sense, and at the time it did, but, you know, somebody else reads it and it doesn't.
That's good.
GIS, we did not adjust anything. Heather is double checking on the pictometry to make sure that that's going to fit within here. And I believe she's working with Shanda on that, so hopefully it is. If not, it's usually a 2-year project. We'll just pay more the next
Yep.
year. And then that gives you the grand total for the general fund. We get to Road and Bridge. Are we
So-
good on general fund?
Oh, general fund, we just, from what was approved last year to this year, we actually dropped $1 million. So everybody knows that.
So we went from last year 15,159 to this year 14,189.
Yep.
Wow, well done.
Road and Bridge, there were a couple changes. I took $2,000 for extra help in landfill out.
Mhm.
I figure if they can't staff to run the landfill, they don't need to work at Road and Bridge 2 this year.
Mhm.
So that could be a 1-year $2,000 savings
Mhm.
for what it's worth. And when you look at the department request versus the clerk's recommendation, it's just a great difference,
Yeah.
is the big difference there. And then operating wise, we worked with Kyle and he came in, they wanted to add a new line, so we took some money, we took 100,000 out of operating supplies roads and we put it into winter maintenance. And then we moved the 100,000 that he had for vehicle repairs, cutting edges,
Mhm.
and moved that into winter maintenance. So basically, he's gonna now track the shop, safety, roads is gonna be more summertime, day-to-day stuff, and then we will track winter maintenance as a separate operating line.
Okay.
Just to try and gauge that. We kind of do that with salaries, or with overtime. They have an overtime for regular maintenance and for winter.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what happens, heavy winter and a light winter, the differences.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like,
And
kinda
that-
like that.
that was he and Tyson's kind of thought process. Other than that,
And on
I-
on Kyle's,
uh-huh.
the total departmental request was 6.8, ended up with 6.3. Does the majority of that come from changing the salaries from what you
Yes.
presented? Okay.
Well, that and I moved out, if you look at the heavy equipment, the 390,000, I moved that into PIL.
Okay.
So that's the difference.
Okay.
I did leave the bridge in here, and the reason I left the bridge in here is when you do the property tax request for road and bridge, there's two separate levies. There's general maintenance and then there's bridge. Cities get a portion of the general maintenance property tax dollars, but not the bridge money. So we always want to budget for the bridge money in here to be paid for with taxes, so that,
Yes.
yes.
Get it.
So that's why I left that one in there. I think did I adjust fuel?
Yeah. Thought I saw some fuel adjustments.
Oh, I didn't adjust it higher than what Kyle had though. So
Yeah.
they must have already taken it up enough. I did double check, tried to double check fuel for departments to make sure that everybody would have enough. Engineer budget, the only thing we did was take out that 20,000 for the surveyors. And we had already discussed with you that we weren't adding the engineer tech this year.
Sheriff's good with theirs.
The sheriff is good with theirs. I did make a couple of adjustments, but when Teresa and Tony looked through them, I've not received a text yet from Teresa, but she thought that they would be fine within them. I cut a couple of little things, but I did take their fuel up 40,000, and that's why I had to make a couple other cuts,
Yeah.
was to try and stay within. They have some retirement eligibilities. Uh-huh.
While we're talking about that, and the wages, the 5% is what's figured in here,
No, not for the sheriff.
not for the sheriff.
So for the
This is-
sheriff, if
This is where
you-
we did the extra, the different,
Yep,
what percentage are they?
it depends on the position. So if you look at the cheat sheet that I gave you,
Are we talking shift differentials?
no,
Just,
Just wages, because I
Tony-
just wondering, this is one of them that we give the bonuses to.
right.
I mean, are
Right.
we covering the bonuses and where we're at?
Yes.
Just as we go.
Okay.
So-
Conversation there.
Tony went through, if you look at this sheet that I gave you,
Mhm.
what they did is they did some grade adjustments. And it depended on the job title. So communication specialists went from 9s to 11s, for example. And then they may have adjusted for equity, depending on, because we hadn't done steps for a little while. So depending on that, they may or may not have done some step adjustments. When you look at this, this is on the 22 scale still, so there is no market adjustment to the salary table. So if they did grade adjustments below 14, then they got a 7% per each grade. If it's a 15 or above, then they got a 9% grade adjustment, or grade change.
Okay.
So, trying to think, so.
I'll review this. I
Okay.
mean, just,
And we can look at it in a little bit more detail, even after this, if you want to go into executive and we could talk. It's easier to talk names because there's so many positions. But this was what Tony felt would help him retain people within the sheriff, jail, and court marshals. And that, most of the grade adjustments will address that. But they did not get the 5% on top of the grade adjustments. So,
okay. Yeah, I think that's a conversation that we need to have. I mean,
okay.
One of the questions I have on this is with the jail adjustment, how much of a gap does that create between the jail and Seth's people?
Seth's people got a 5%, If they got a two-step, then they got a 14%, so you take the 5 minus the 14 and you get a 9%, which is roughly 1 grade difference. And that's a conversation that we might want to have. When we talked to the sheriff's office about how many grades should be different between the sheriff, or between detention and juvenile detention, they felt 2 grades minimally. Just simply.
And why did they feel that?
Because the jail deals with, they have to carry guns, so they're certified to carry guns. Those guys do not. If you look at the inmate to officer ratio, it is vastly different.
Yeah.
And if you look at some of the other trainings, then there's also some differences there. So they thought maybe at least a 2-grade difference would make more sense. They deal with a little bit harder core criminals at the jail than detention does, and that was another factor.
Okay. Seth would argue that to a certain extent, but I think your justifications are okay.
I think if that was going to be debated, it would be best to have maybe Seth, the sheriff, in the same room, and then they could talk about having an individual.
See that arm wrestle go?
Yeah,
That is
because-
the conversation that would need to happen.
Because if you're in a pod with, 100 people versus if you're in there with 5,
Right.
that's a big difference.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but that, they can duke that out. Let's see. I think that was kind of the bulk of the changes. We did take out $2,500, or add $2,500 for a phone 911 was paying, and they shouldn't be, so we threw it in here. But overall, they went up a little bit, and that was because of fuel in their operating. Prosecutors, we did not adjust anything. Oh, we gave them 10,000 for comfort,
Okay,
and that was discussed in their,
yeah,
Meeting.
they got staff last year.
yeah. If they come before you, it's because they want 2 positions, secretaries to be upgraded. I'm not sure if Steve will come before you with that. I let him know that we would adjust all grades. Hopefully next year when the salary plan comes through, looking at everybody, and hopefully around November. But that we didn't want to pick and choose grade adjustments for people. The jail, we budgeted 3 positions for 6 months. Again, they've got 11. They were good with doing 3
Yeah.
for 6 months. And then I did make some B budget adjustments. If you, let's see, where did I adjust them? I think the only one I really adjusted was repairs and maintenance building. The sheriff's office told us we could take some out because of lawn maintenance, and that'll now be done by our maintenance department. But also I needed to steal a little so that we could balance, so I took it to an even 700.
Yep.
And we adjusted, the other items we adjusted was because I didn't get the new positions.
Yeah. That's equipment.
So on commissary, that matches revenue.
That's an outside, that's the commissary for the inmates, that matches
Right.
revenue. It's an outside account.
Right, that's just a 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Okay.
They can't spend those dollars, so if it comes
Right.
in at 400, they can't spend it at the extra 100.
Yeah. I was just looking at last year's budget from 400,000 to this year at 500. But I'm looking at your expenditures and it was above that.
Yeah.
21, so.
It just, it depends on,
Right, it's a fluctuating
Yeah.
number.
depends on inmates, depends on what they can afford.
Yep.
We operate more as a pass-through account
Yes,
with
yeah. But I have to book it, so.
that. Right.
So that is Justice Fund, Ambulance District. The only thing I added in here, which needs discussion, is they're doing deployments. Chief Gates was a part of implementing this. We really don't see any of the costs associated with it because it's all mostly personnel. And so what they will do is if there's a fire, say in Oregon, they will send, if they've got the abilities, they'll send someone over there. We get reimbursed those expenses. So what I did is I put in 60,000 as an expense and 60,000 as revenue in case they do this. And what'll happen is they'll spend the money within the contract. And if they do a deployment and we get the 60,000 in, then we can use that 60 to cover an overage in the contract. We are potentially running into that issue this year. They've already done deployments and they have received some money and they might not make the contract. So that is an area that when I go meet with the new CFO over at Pokey, we'll discuss that and make sure we have communication when they do deployments.
Deployment is ambulance, not
Yeah.
fire?
It can be ambulance too. They'll send EMS service as support staff
That's for it. Okay.
for,
But they weren't supposed to send the ambulances.
I don't know what they're sending.
Yeah, they're supposed to just send personnel.
Okay,
Is what's
and-
supposed to happen.
That might be what they do.
Well, Income sends a lot of firefighters out. They make a lot of money, actually.
Yeah.
But ambulance just kind of seems odd
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, no, they'll send the ambulance, especially if it's a fire that's in a populated area. So a lot of the fires in the California area where they're in a lot of those towns and a lot of that stuff, they'll send EMS. They'll put out it's called a DISCA request, and so they'll send out.
I may ask him if he does that, if he would just email me so
Yeah.
that I know they're doing it, so that I can keep track of, because I don't see the revenue that goes to the city and that money has traditionally gone to the city, which then it needs to come to us if we're going to cover it in the contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's
So-
one that almost looks like if it's contract that we should be signing
Yes.
That might be a discussion.
rather than the city.
Well, it's for
Because
ambulance
an ambulance.
services.
Is all. Board of Ambulance should be signing that contract.
Let me make a note.
Okay.
So the justice fund essentially went up $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
We also didn't put any money in the general fund department that I had done last year. So if you look at page probably 5 or 6, Department 0104 was the sheriff budget and general fund. That's 0.
Yeah, so we didn't use any general fund dollars.
Because we could absorb it within
Yeah.
the levy.
Right? That's what it's there for.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the whole thing. When your levy doesn't grow enough, but your budget still grows enough, then you can't fit it in, then you have to move it over into the general fund the next year and make it work.
And we did take all dollars available in the ambulance district levy. District Court, we have that other position that's marked in the comments or in the notes field where we did the grade adjustments. And then we reduced the retirement payout a little bit because it was a little overinflated for the payouts that we might need to make.
Okay.
And operating wise.
Done. Why is there a clerk there? I mean, didn't he retire?
Oh, yeah, that's just not updated.
Okay.
We'll update that name. We should just take the names off, but
Mhm.
Yeah, Thompson's on there too, isn't he?
yeah, both of them.
I just saw done in 52,000, 53,000, so.
Yeah, we just need to update those judges. Secretaries. Operating, we did do a few adjustments. The $2,500 text notifications was asked for down below. We put it in an actual line item. And took down licenses just because it was a little overinflated. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, we took out, they had double budgeted the critical equipment for the court marshals, so that's in the court marshal department. So we didn't need it in both.
Okay.
So those were really the only adjustments in that department. We left the remodel of the courtroom. look at the court marshals, they follow the same salary schedule as the sheriff and jail. And we left in here the security system. They have said that they're gonna pay $43,000 this year, so hopefully they get that done in the next 2 months.
I wanna know who bid the security system for them. So the big problem is that they have how much of a total project that may or may not have been bid?
That is one of the items that I was gonna talk about at the end, is I need to know what projects are still outstanding that might need to roll over into next fiscal year, so that I can make sure those are budgeted for, like the roof.
Did that one go through procurement?
I don't think so.
Yeah, and that's the problem is that's why everything that goes through procurement is
The
stuff.
security system.
I don't remember seeing that one.
Yeah, and so that's the problem is
Okay, I'll just make a note.
it's not a professional service, that's a,
So most likely what we need to do is budget the whole thing in next year.
I mean, you could split it over a year, but I mean, it's gotta go
Well,
through.
they've got
bid
43 this
procurement.
year. They're not gonna get that done in 2 months, especially if they haven't bid it. So,
Well, and this is a conversation about, you said the court marshals follow the salary table of the sheriff's office.
they're under the supervision of the sheriff.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But their responsibilities compared to
Well,
over at juvenile.
Oh, oh.
I'm just saying as we're looking at the whole picture.
Yeah.
And we're talking
That-
apples and oranges and
now, you do have a
bananas.
lot of the marshals here that go out and work in the jail on the weekends, and when they need shifts, they'll actually go out and work them.
Yeah,
Well, I'm just saying, that
isn't that a different shift differential when they work court
No.
martial versus go out there?
They don't get shift differentials.
Yeah,
That's
But
the wrong term.
The rationale for it is most of the time court marshals come from the jail,
yeah.
and so they're the same grade because they have to have the arrest abilities, and that might be another item that I don't know their officers.
Well, no, but that's a discussion point,
arrest.
though. That's
Ours
a-
can.
Yeah, that's a discussion point, though, is, the
So-
court
you
marshals.
can't compare what they're
Yeah.
doing to this single
working in the
gal
jail.
that was in there with 150 inmates.
Yeah.
You
So that
know?
could be a discussion.
I'm just saying.
Yep.
If we're talking about it one way, we gotta talk about it in both sides.
Well, and that's what I say is, I hate to say this, but, your juvenile detention deputy, why are they just not sheriff's deputies?
That's conversation.
Different post certifications.
Well, I know that, but what I'm saying is why aren't they just sheriff's deputies?
Then they would be under the supervision of the sheriff.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean,
There's a few offices we've talked about.
I'm just saying, that's,
And what do you do with Seth? Just have
well,
him be the.
he can be the
facility
administrator and still
manager?
mad, but the whole thing is how do those deputies, okay, I get it, they're all going to post, who are they under, why is it its own?
And Seth is, I believe Seth's post
He is post certified.
certified.
I mean, they all are.
Their post certification, each,
Uh-huh,
depending
it's
on your
different.
task is different, so, I don't know.
Well, the
That
state
could
is
be a
actually
later
talking
discussion.
about.
As we talk about wages,
Yeah.
all those things have to be talked
Well,
about.
and the state's talking about in the next year or so, there's a lot of those post certifications, they're actually talking about making this is the general post certification, and then that's just an add-on that you
Right.
do, and so that would actually help a lot of
Yeah,
the discussion.
good.
All right.
Okay, so I made a note about the security system. We probably want to just budget that whole thing in '23.
That would
So,
make sense.
we'll change that to 150. 577, and we'll just carry it forward. And then, I made a note, bid process on it.
Yeah, because it's never been through procurement, we don't even know
As
who's.
far as I know, it hasn't.
I
You haven't
don't
seen it?
remember seeing it.
I haven't seen an RFP or an
Kathleen
RFQ.
Ballard has taken lead on that, so we can discuss that with Tony, and then he can make sure she knows what needs done.
Okay.
Okay,
I don't know, they just haven't selected the buddy and said, hey, come put a security system in.
and I don't, yeah,
I mean,
anyways,
that's the whole reason why you do
Yeah.
it, is make sure you have
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
qualified that
Yeah.
can do the job.
so we have a follow-up on that. Fair District left at 11,000, fair maintenance. When we were putting together the clerk's recommendation, we did have a phone call with Jamie so that we didn't have to meet with the board, just for
Mhm.
simplicity purposes. We reduced special projects to $5,000 from 50. The basic thing is to get them a first aid station and an eye wash station in that new barn. so that, just for safety concerns.
And the new barn is it's 95,000? The new
Well,
sheet barn?
the new, yeah, so they did request 120 for a new building. Jason was not comfortable with just an arbitrary amount, or that we want it and we're gonna build something, what's it gonna be?
And make a note,
They came, real quick, they came back with, well, what they would like to see is they would like to start updating buildings. So if we could do, say, the new sheet barn this year, which would be a 90 by 40 estimate, roughly $95,000.
Do you know if Dan looked at that to help them get that number?
No.
or
well, and it
is
needs to go
just a
through
swag?
procurement.
It's a pole barn, so,
It's not an ag building because it's people inside of it, so it
Okay.
can't be an ag building. It has to be a public works building.
well,
It has to-
she was just trying to throw
Yeah.
a good guesstimate, because she didn't want to throw out too high, too low.
Double that.
You can't go get, so that was just,
My head hurts.
I have two problems with
My
it.
head hurts.
One is Jamie is a part-time employee.
right,
The chairman should have been the one that we contact and have conversation
If
with, in
the-
my opinion.
board would like to reach out,
Well,
then,
the chairman himself
yeah.
should have been involved, not Jamie. And then the other deal, you don't put a pole barn in. We already got pole barns down there that are leaning.
Yeah.
You know what I say?
That's what they're trying to do is pull barn.
Okay, I wanted to
They
make sure I
keep-
didn't
Yes,
misspeak.
no, they keep trying to do
Okay.
this. And the problem is
Okay.
they keep saying, well, it's an ag building. An ag building is a building that is only ever going to have animals and no commercial.
Okay.
This is a public display building that you can't, it has to be a public works license. It's- oh my-
Foundations, the whole bit.
So would you, we,
We got pole barns down there now.
so I can follow up with Christie and have her reach out to
Yeah.
Sheldon and have him come in if you want to discuss this, or,
Well, yeah, I mean, they have to know what we're looking at for them to spend money on if we're gonna grant money there, in my opinion. I appreciate what they're trying to do, but also all buildings and stuff like that come through the commissioners.
right.
Yeah.
And
And
just
so-
because,
I guess it
It's
could be up
budgeted.
to us what,
Yeah, I mean, you have $95,000.
we wouldn't even have to go through them, it'd just be up to us to decide where that $95,000 is spent and how it's spent.
and if you are good with putting money towards buildings down there, we could put whatever dollar amount you want, and then you can dictate to them what will or will not happen, or,
Well, it's a bigger discussion on do we continue to invest down there or do we put it in somewhere else?
Well, and I agree with that, but at the same time, I wonder, because it's easier to come down and we can't go up, do we go back to the 120 while we have those discussions and let Dan or whoever else look at it and give us some more?
I mean, it's,
Because 95,000 is.
oh, pole barn, that won't even buy that. So what they're trying to do is they're just trying to buy a steel building and say, put it up. Well, we can buy a steel building and then concrete. Well, the problem is your concrete alone, and this isn't just Joe Bob and his buddies go out there and pour concrete. This has to have a stamped foundation underneath it. This has to be, you can build a pole barn, it can be a pole barn, but it's got to be a public works licensed person that sets it all up and puts it all together. Dan could run it, but then Dan's not going to do anything for 4 or 5 months. And this is the problem we're running into.
Well,
The rules that we have, they're not even coming close to following.
right.
And that's the problem that we have. This is an absolute no. You cannot just go set this up because you think you want to do this. And this is where the north end's going to get pissed, because why are we spending the money down there? How are we doing that? Why are we even putting it in? Why are you building a new building when you have old buildings that are falling down?
so
I mean,
we
That's
have,
what you do, is replace them, but
so we have multiple options.
the decision is whether we're gonna invest down there or not.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's the, I mean,
Well, that's why I say it's easier to take it out than it is to put it in. So do we just
And that's-
leave some of that in there while we have these discussions?
So they have 182,000 in excess reserves. We could easily
just budget
use,
the reserves. And
we
stuff.
could easily put 120 back in here instead of the 80 or 95. And then they would just use the reserves down, which is how we would fund this anyways, because it's one time. The other option is, you
Oh.
could throw money into maintenance if you want to try to repair.
No, because
buildings.
your buildings are not even going to be repaired. They're going to be recapitalized.
Okay.
Most of these buildings, this isn't just like, hey, we need to go put a roof on it. Most of these buildings, the foundation, there is nothing holding them up.
Okay,
Well, I'd like to go to the 120.
okay.
Yeah.
And
5
then-
gallon bucket with concrete.
Well, and that's what we're saying.
And then we
This is-
adjust the size of the building according to the monies that we
I mean,
have.
Okay. Okay,
I just, because it's easier to take it down than it is to go up.
Yep.
Let's take
Nope.
that conservative approach.
and then at this point, you give them that money when we do the commission proposed, if it's approved, then you have a meeting with the board and say, this is how you implement this budget.
And this is the other thing too.
Type thing.
They want an eye washing station in a pole barn with no insulation.
No,
So-
this is for that,
For
this
the-
isn't the new barn, it's the new barn, but it's the new property.
Oh, the new property. It's
Sorry.
still not insulated.
It's where the maintenance is done in
Yeah.
that.
And they
other
have no water, we talked about that, they have no water, but, one of the things we discussed was, don't they have waterless?
They have portable.
They do.
That's what our discussion was,
Portable
is to
water.
come up with something like that.
But it's silly to me, we're talking about safety here, and we got a building down there, they have to push with the tractor to get it lined up.
To get it-
Once a week.
to get it
And we're
level.
gonna go and allow 4-H kids to go inside that building.
Do you want me to reach out to Sheldon then and set a meeting or?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Because like I say, it's gonna be one of them meetings that
Oh,
we
that's
are
this
gonna end up saying, you guys, we're okay in this, but that becomes
And
Okay.
our responsibility as commissioners, not
Okay.
theirs.
Caitlin was just saying that that barn that you were just talking about is the one they want to replace with this 120.
So they got tear down expenses and then rebuild expenses, so the 120,000 doesn't even.
Nope.
Okay.
Not even close.
Okay.
That's okay.
That's
Leave
why
the,
we'll have
leave the
a
120
conversation.
from reserves and we'll go from there.
Okay. They can frame up and they can close it later. Let's see, fair exhibit. We put in here, we got the maintenance assistant and the management assistant both on the scale now. We did make the management assistant a full-time position, which, however, the commission would like to proceed, we can adjust for that, but we did get them on the scale, so even if the position is cut back to part-time or whatever, we can keep that individual on the scale. We didn't adjust the operating budget. Do you want to discuss the salaries?
It's a position that we're gonna have to talk about. I didn't see any justification for it.
Okay.
And just to put the position in there because that's what they want now. I didn't see a justification. We've asked everybody else.
Okay.
You can't have somebody without the justification.
If I have to have taxpayer dollars pay for one partial position or something that we're doing, we have engineer techs and planning and zoning people that are far more on the top of the list before we go up there.
Yeah.
When we go into executive session to talk about positions, let's talk about that one. Because then we can talk a little more specifics. County fair, the only item, we adjusted a couple items. We took the entertainment down. We basically met them in the middle. We took a little bit of an increase, but not exactly what they wanted. And then we took the rodeo down to 20,000 as opposed to 30. And miscellaneous isn't something that just needs budgeted
This
for,
is
so we
problem I
took that
have
out.
with your entertainment budget request. That is what we spend, almost what we spend on the 4th of July. And we have 35,000 people on the Hill for $100,000 as opposed to 7,000 people for $100,000 on the fair.
Would you like that adjusted down to what number?
Oh, you don't really want to ask me that question there. That's really, as I just looked at it, I thought, that's an
Jeff or
enterprise,
Ernie?
that could be an enterprise fund for Bannock County events in the enterprise fund, and all the entertainment could be done through our enterprise fund.
What are they charging for admission to the concert this year?
Nothing.
No, they're charging.
No, they were
No, there's one concert they are.
$10 a head.
There's one that they are, and then there's another one that looks like that they're not.
Charging for the rodeo, they're charging for the Friday night concert.
Again,
But compared to last year's artist and this year's artist,
I
Who's
think
this
they
year's
lucked out
artist?
last year.
I have no idea what their name really is.
I can't
Never
remember the
heard of
name,
them.
I'd have to look it
It's
up
an,
again.
the book down on my-
it's an Eagles tribute band.
I've heard they are good. who.
Well, there's that one, but
But
then
it's
I
not
keep
the
seeing a
Eagles.
different
No.
one. I keep seeing a
But-
different one that's here. for-
No, there's a female
Yeah.
that's gonna be one of the,
That's the main one
Other-
that's on the free one on the thing. The one they're charging is the Eagles band. They're not, they're doing
Okay.
two of them. They're not
who
doing.
did I hear? Somebody told me that whoever it is that's doing the Eagles tribute, if you weren't looking at the stage, you wouldn't know it wasn't them. But I don't remember who
Well,
told
I've
me
seen
that.
Don Henley in concert, so I guarantee you, I probably know it wasn't.
Okay, do you have any adjustments in here you would like to
Well,
see?
again, the problem we need to have this conversation is why are we spending $100,000, well, $93,000 for 7,000 people? That's my whole issue. I'm getting to the point where this is
This
getting.
is entertainment for
A week.
a week. I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so 7,000 people that show up 3 times, I get that. I understand that, but it comes back to what are we doing in the cost of money of what's going on there? We spend $100,000 on the 4th of July for the entire county, and we have 30,000 people on the hill, and every parking lot that has a view of the fireworks has people in it in the entire area. I mean, I don't know what. I'm getting real hard pressed as a taxpayer to say, why are we paying for a private party in South County?
Well, and that's part of the
I
discussion.
see no
that
high
we gotta
schools
have.
from Highland and Pokey
Do you
and
want me to
Century
have-
on there.
Do you want to plan on having
Yeah.
at least the chairman come in? Or do you want to have the fair board try and come in maybe next Monday?
Do you want to talk to them all?
Not really. I'm really just.
Well,
I'm really just.
And this is a bigger discussion than just the budget.
It is.
So I think that we'll just
Okay.
go ahead with the
Okay.
budget and then we'll have that discussion afterwards. I mean, I
you-
don't want to bring them in 2 weeks before they have their fair and get everybody
That's very good.
Riled up.
all riled up like we have in years past.
So do we want to take the request back down to this year?
Just to sit it at
85?
85 for right now.
Is that okay? 85?
I'm good with that. For the reasons stated.
Okay. 4-H, the only thing I added was the 4-H operating that matches revenue.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's the same request. Health Department, we took up to the 1,122,000. Historical, we talked to Daniel. He has money in there for the lighting that she requested within her capital. But we put back in $11,000 in here for him to do any other repair and maintenance projects that may need to be done. We put it in here simply because of the separate levy. But Daniel will be in charge of tracking that dollar amount, and then you can either give him the authority to pay the bill, or you guys can, whichever you want to do. And then adding the LAVA contribution, those were the only 2 things for that department. In indigent, is that good?
Yeah.
In indigent, we left the people budgeted that are in there right now, so we left Chantel and her expenses in here, and we also left the public defenders in here for this year. We're still waiting on the revenue replacement for the attorneys. But as far as her operating, we left everything as to what she had. The only thing we're doing is changing her job title so that it matches more of what she's doing and what was taken away. Within the direct assistant budget, all medical was taken out. And then we still have some of the contributions. We did take out the deduction for Hope Recovery. That is now 0. And we increased Right Tomorrow's just a little bit to match what we give community guardians. And that's all.
Okay.
Those look okay?
Yep.
What was the one that we were talking about that we weren't happy about? with
Hope
what they did?
recovery, that is
That's one that
zero.
we're cutting out.
Okay, all right, just wanted to make sure. that
Yep.
was it.
We went back and forth on if we would do 10,000 and decided that if it's not a public service that people are happy with, then why do anything?
Correct.
So, then we go to public defender's budget. We just did the salary adjustments, market adjustments. I moved the 372,000 for conflict attorneys out of this department and put it into the Office of Conflict, just because we might as well have it all in one department as opposed to some of it in here. And that was the only adjustment we made to the operating budget. And then Office of Conflict, we've got the 2 attorney positions, the 2 admins, benefits, and then instead of giving all 372 into this department for the conflict attorneys, I just put it at 300, just simply because we shouldn't have as many to pay where we've got 2 staff members.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully it works out.
Hoping.
Hopefully it's gone.
And then I adjusted down the criminal investigations because I needed $600 for some reason. Oh, because I gave it to the internet. Then I didn't have to add and change anything because I'd already had it balanced. And if I didn't, then I would have had to redo 3 different
Is that
spreadsheets.
creating accounting?
Yes, it is. And I didn't want to redo my projections.
I'm sorry, I need you to repeat what you said about the 300,000. I was doing
So
something else and missed that.
the conflict attorney contracts were 372.
Okay.
But because we now have 2 attorneys that will
You
take
double
over
the
part of
size.
that caseload, I reduced the conflict attorneys that we pay out on the either contract or individual basis to 300.
Okay.
So I tried to see some savings there
Okay.
because,
Well, we should see some savings
Yeah.
because you got 2 attorneys that are doing double the caseload for virtually almost the same amount of money. I mean, it's a little bit more and you have some staff that you're putting in there.
Right.
That and what we're seeing too is the attorneys that are still on,
Well,
that are
that-
doing that hourly,
That's
it's
kind of
coming down.
That's where I was going,
Yeah.
is because we're about like half.
Yeah.
right.
is
I'd
what we're
see-
seeing.
So between those 2 factors was why I took it to 3.
I'd set it at 3 this year and just kind
Yeah,
of,
I was.
Because you're gonna have 2 more
I was gonna be a
years.
little bit more aggressive with that, but that's okay.
but next year I'd definitely be, because then next year you'll know
We'll know.
kind of where
Yeah.
where you're at.
Yeah.
And I was afraid to be too aggressive, just simply because if we don't meet it, then
That's
we
the
gotta
one,
come up with
that's the
money.
one we don't want to bullet, because you will
Yeah.
just find the money.
Thank you for going back over that.
That's the indigent. As soon as I get replacement monies, that was one area that we might be able to save some property tax dollars.
Okay.
I don't have dollar amounts yet on what the replacement money looks like.
So the indigent of 2.7 million, that's what we're looking for, the property tax, or not the property tax, but the replacement
We're thinking it
dollars
should be,
Some of it.
because of that,
yeah,
right?
it'll be
Yes.
somewhere in that market, and we don't know for sure what exactly, but it was in over the 2 million, 2.2, 2.5, or 2.7. There's several numbers, but it was over the 2.
Right, so theoretically, again, hypothetical numbers, that 2.7 could go down to maybe even 1 million or more.
Well, right now on the revenue, I didn't budget, I did use some reserves because that fund is gonna go away.
I'll burn the reserves out of it.
And budget enough to.
I don't have my
when we
projection
talk about
spreadsheet right
getting
here.
refunds,
When we get to that, I'll find
Be
it.
covered the right way.
Right, right.
It's right here. I planned for 738,000, oh wait, that's the wrong line. 1,000,003 in property taxes for indigent.
Yeah, so if we get another $1
So-
million in, or wherever
Yeah.
it comes in at.
Then we
could
can
see a couple
reassess.
hundred grand,
So
yeah.
then theoretically, the 31 million you were telling me yesterday,
Yeah, the 31,459
Would go
could be.
down to 30 or 29 something.
Potentially,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
depending on what that dollar comes in at.
Just wanted to make sure I was tracking. Thank you.
Yep.
Walk down to the library right quick. You guys keep going.
We're at most of the easy ones.
Yeah.
Junior college, we just did 40,000. That one I thought was gonna go up with Eastern Idaho, it hasn't. So I think we'll be okay there. We talked about the parks, the event center budget. Scott did not budget for the software for CityWorks, so we put that in here. The CDL training, he talked about when he came to meet with us on the department level, about extra money for the CDL training, and I took his fuel up 10,000 because I didn't think he was going to make it. When I did that, then I also cut 10,000 from his maintenance on the soccer fields to try to absorb some of that. And he told us we could cut out one of the leases to 31,000. And then we took out the capital items because we will either buy them this year or we will put them in PILT for next year. We also put the movies in the park in here because it's really not a moneymaker. So it's one that we just need to utilize most likely property taxes for. And so far, we've not spent that much on it, but work. The next one is 200,000 for concessions. If we do the Monday when we talk about the enterprise fund, this will go to zero because it'll become a part of that enterprise fund. That's it for Parks and Rec. Okay, appraisal. So we split the 3 positions we talked about in the assessor's department. We added the appraiser analyst, which we'll get a formal title for that. Right now I'm not sure what we're going to call it, so I just put analyst. And then Anita is working on a job description with the assessor for that. That's not necessarily a new position, it was just moved from motor vehicles. As far as the operating budget, we broke out the travel a little bit. It's the only thing we did. We didn't add money, we just broke it out. And then the line item that Sherry called concerned about was we had in professional services, they had requested 50, it's at 20. That's the amount that is for the
Bills.
Matt
your
Virgil when
assessments.
he came and helped. And then the contract services is the
Master's touch.
Master's Touch.
Yeah, that's the
And she's
stuff.
afraid that 20 is going to be too low, so she asked if we could put that at 30. It's usually about 25, but postage went up.
Yeah, I'm okay with the Master's touch one. That's one
I
that
forgot
we,
postage went up.
Yeah.
we gotta have that, so.
We okay with that one?
So that goes up to 30.
Yeah. And what we will do is, after we get through today, any changes we'll have, we'll coordinate what I've got, what she's got, we'll write it all out, bring it back before you on Monday, make sure that you agree with all of those changes before we make them. Okay. Since I'm not doing my, do I have to do it?
Well, a little thought in between helps,
It does.
sometimes both ways.
Yes. Okay, landfill, we added the landfill operations manager for 6 months. That'll give them a chance to get staff up and also to get the assistant public works position hired and up to speed before they are adding another position that will need trained. That was the thought process behind that. The public works director and assistant public work director is split with Road and Bridge. We have, I did leave in the department request of 2,000 for separation payout. Normally, that's not something that we do, but because they've had such turnover, I didn't figure it would hurt too much to have a little bit in there to cover vacation or sick if we have it.
Yeah.
And then operating wise, we did cut the repair and maintenance office equipment a little bit, 7,000. Kyle was okay with that. Fuel seemed to be okay. And that was, we adjusted the cell liner down to 2.5 because we're paying the bulk of that this year.
Yeah.
And then because this is our first enterprise fund, note that we've got the admin fee of 5%. We charge that admin fee on all enterprise funds to help recoup your office, our office, treasurers for cash operations and banking fees, and HR. So it just goes to the general fund. Any questions on that one?
No.
Just another project up there. There needs to be a restroom.
Where?
That skill house.
Jason
Oh.
tried hitting that one really hard because
No.
that drives him nuts.
It drives
They
me
need,
nuts.
So,
they need something for sure.
The scale house, I talked to Kyle about that, and that scale house, you can actually, they need to take that scale house, they need to put, they only have one scale in there right now. They need to go in and put 2 scales in, one automated, one that's actually at the scale house. And then you need, that scale house, you just lift it off, and they make those. I was at a landfill down in Missouri, and they literally just come in with a Connex and just set it right in there. It has a bathroom in the back, has everything, and we'd have to run the plumbing line over to the drain field and do that. That's a major project, but it needs to be done, but the problem is we can't do that right now, the $2 million liner, unless you got $500,000 laying around in the
I just don't want it to go off the radar.
Land-
It's just one of them deals.
Yeah.
Can in the capital acquisition?
yeah, you got 500 grand left in the solid waste enterprise fund. That's the problem, is we got to get that lift done. If we didn't have that done, that's what
Yeah.
Kyle and I were talking about, is once that's done, then that allows the following year to probably do something about that. But we got to do
You want to
something.
adjust the scales before you start putting in water lines, right?
Yes.
Or do it all at the same
Yeah, it all
time?
has to be at the same time. Because what you want to do is, the scale house now comes in and you only have one scale.
Right.
And really what we want to do is, even if you could put in one that's talking to the window, and then, like when you go to the car wash, it reads the RFID tag on it. If you have it, it just opens the door and lets you in. You have 2 more,
automated one.
and it just, so all the pokey trucks, all the automated stuff. When we want to close the landfill for a day,
Then they just run.
you don't even
those.
have to have the house, you just run those gates.
Yep.
Okay.
But we also have to, you're talking $500,000 to $1 million to do all that.
So maybe they could start researching that. We could do it in 24.
Yeah, like I said, I just wanted
Could you
I don't want it to
put,
go off the radar. I want us to make sure that we're talking about the
here's a better question.
things that
You
need to
got,
happen.
in the reserve side, is there any reserves to put like $50,000 to $100,000 to do all of the design work and the architecture and engineering work for that?
Take care of some of that.
And I'd
You
get
wanna do
started,
that?
I would get started on it right now.
We can put that in, we can put it in a building line item.
Yeah, and tag
Capital building?
specifically scale house,
Renovation, remodel.
recapitalization. Because, that scale house is garbage. It's time to,
Okay, how much? 50?
if you have $50,000 or $100,000 in reserve, something in there to start all your engineering work and all
Well, we
of
can
that.
budget 100 if we don't need it, we
But
don't use it
budget
all.
100, because then if we don't get to it, we don't need to. But that allows us then to go to RFP,
Yep,
select engineering and architect to put it all together. Because there's going to be, if you have to do some land, or to try and get a drain in, to drainage and all that other stuff, you're going to be, probably.
we want to
in there.
label it architect,
Architect, engineering,
engineering. Okay,
design work,
Perfect,
or whatever, something like that, just so you know
Okay.
specifically what it's for.
yep, done. That'll make Jason happy too, because we talked about that quite a bit.
Well, that's one of those projects that it's going to take a couple years, and if we can get it to where, once the landfill lift's done next year, and you already have all your work and everything done, then you set it at budget next year, and then you go and you do it the following year.
Okay. Gas system, what did I adjust? Admin fees, we adjusted up, and professional fees. We adjusted up because of that carbone. We had to pay we have to pay the second half. And Kyle talked about that when he came in. So that was the only adjustment in there.
Mhm.
Liability insurance, the only adjustment we made is we consolidated it all into one line because I don't know why for years we have broken it out, but it's been arbitrary.
Yeah,
So just throw it in one line and,
call it good.
yeah. Did I
Okay.
take that up? No, but this amount is based on all of the employees doing their rebates, or the rebates,
Training.
the training, so that
Mhm.
we can get the
Yeah.
rebate off. So, they need to do it.
We're down to 2 or 3 employees, part-time employees, which I don't understand why they're on the list.
That might be something we talk to my crimp about, because on-call and temp employees, it's
Have
really
never
tough to
been
get
on
them to
there.
do training.
Mhm.
So,
I mean, I'm not against them being
Having training.
asked to do the training.
Right.
But we shouldn't be penalized with a part-time
Yeah.
employee.
I agree.
well, and I still think that we never had to have 100%. I don't know when and how that got changed.
So I
but,
understand too.
Yeah.
Well, it happened a couple times this year.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so. Veterans, I did make some adjustments here. When I say, I mean the clerk.
Mhm.
We took out the luncheons for inmate labor, because there's no business purpose or building purpose for it. If they're not there cleaning and they're not providing lunches, then they don't need that money.
Nope.
We also adjusted down the repairs and maintenance because there's no building manager. I believe we talked about that when they were here.
Mhm.
And then we took the windows down to 150 to split over 2 years, and I believe we discussed that too during that meeting.
Yeah.
Now, that might be something, because we usually pay that bill directly, we might need to go through procurement with that.
Yeah. If that big of a project, to do that,
They
yeah,
will.
I'd say that if you're doing $150 or 150,000, we would do it, but we'd procure it.
And that's a multi-year.
And I don't want them going through and trying to procure that,
Right.
because that's
That's a violation waiting to happen.
that's just a migraine for a lot of people to have to deal with.
So, noxious weed, we adjusted chemicals down based on usage.
Okay.
Granted, this year they are using some inventory that had
Mhm.
been stockpiled, but even in the heightened years when they were stocking up on inventory, they didn't use 190,000. If you look at FY20, they used 154. So with price increases, 190 should be sufficient.
Yeah.
And we took 3,000 from operating, but that was about it. And then we left the water to the lower shop, capital item,
Yeah.
17,000.
Yeah.
Does that look okay? Mosquito was probably pretty much about the same thing. We took operating down because usage wasn't there. And then we took down repair and maintenance office equipment for the same reason. Fuel looked good. Chemicals, we took down to 55 for the exact same reason. And we left in the 17,000 for the water to the lower shop.
Okay.
We let Kyle know what we were doing on all of these. They were okay with it.
Yeah.
There were a few areas that they were concerned, but I reassured them they would make budget.
Yeah.
Pilt is where we moved in Julie's air ballots at 30,000. We put 20,000 in for the commercial lawn equipment, as I told you. For Kyle Road and Bridge, we put in the roller for 205,000 and then the balloon payment on the grader, so that we will take ownership of that. I did have the 25,000 in here for the gators, but we can zero that out, assuming it's approved to make that purchase this year.
If we can make that purchase this year, I'd purchase the gators and the backhoe this year. That backhoe is a piece of crap they have up there. I don't even know how it's ran half the time. So, I mean, if there's nothing else this year and because it's this year's budget, it's 2021's budget, and then it's not in here, and then it opens up these funds. It opens up $25,000 in gator funds right now.
Well, we've identified Pilt to do it, and now we've gone through the budget. I feel a lot more comfortable than I did this morning when we was talking about it. I just,
Yeah.
when it's the first person in here
No.
that talked
And you haven't
to,
seen it, yeah.
and I haven't seen anything else, I didn't feel as comfortable.
Well, and like I said, it opens up. Did you have the backhoe on this budget for?
No, I didn't even put it in here
but
because we
did have
had
the
already
gators in
talked.
here, though.
Because at the time that we talked, he wasn't
Okay.
sure he was gonna get the gators until October, but then
If
we
have
hadn't met and he found them.
anything we can buy it at 2021, we want to buy it.
22.
Especially if you can get that. No, this year's budget.
22.
Right now.
This
That's
is
or
22.
2022. Yeah, sorry. You know what I'm talking about. Well, it's 2021 that we approved 2022 because it's 2021.
One more time for those listening at home.
One more time. It's 2022. Anything we can get out of 2022's budget to offset costs to make it cheaper. And what that does is that also opens up some funds that if we have issues in the, if we do get more Pilt or less Pilt, then it doesn't constrain us so bad.
Yeah,
So Braden, if you'd make sure that gets put on the budget, but we could let him know that he can move forward.
Well, we need to put it on.
Verbally.
Yeah, we need to put it on for Thursday to have approval.
For Scott stuff?
For Scott stuff, yeah.
And everybody's good with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. That's, if we can buy it,
I just mean financially,
Yeah.
we're covered.
yep.
We're
And I'll do, we're gonna need to open the budget for a few other items. So I'll put all of those together and then present those to you. We've got the D6 that we haven't opened the budget for the stipends. We've got the money, but we haven't opened it yet because you have to advertise. I wanted to do it in one shot and save some money for
Right.
advertising plus the public hearing time.
Problem.
So I'll present those and include this after you guys approve it.
Yeah, let's move forward.
Okay.
Good.
Snowmobile, we just left the ask except for,
Just swap vehicle
Oh.
repairs around. And
Yes.
Operating supplies.
Yep. And we took up the contract labor because of the 5,000.
Yep.
Waterways, I left at 25, but revenue is not coming in great, but I'd rather over budget. And, but I need to bring forward to you what I think we need to spend this year. I should be getting our big payment hopefully in the next month or two. We may not need to spend any of this next year if we don't get any money.
for waterways.
Yeah. It's super low. It's weird.
Well, it's because there's no water in the reservoirs.
There's still lots of people running around in boats. So, yeah. Emergency communications, this is
That's,
what he asked for, other than I added the 5%
no.
admin fee, which is what we charge. And we corrected a few line items.
That's good to see. A lot of positive things happening.
Yep. I need to do a reserve analysis on them. I will bring that before you when I do, it's probably about time that we do a fund balance analysis and define projects if we've got too much money sitting in any one fund.
Yeah.
So I'll just include that in that same.
Yeah.
And we can do that probably around budget time. It's a good time to reappropriate. We've got the Forensic Pathology Department, which is an enterprise fund. I followed as much as possible the budget that was given to me by Commissioner Huff. The admin assistant was the only one that I could comfortably try and assign a grade to, so I gave it a 9.
Okay.
And then benefits followed. we did a 5% admin fee like we do on the others, and it came in at about the same budget dollar that you had put together on yours.
We'll rub our tummy, see how it works.
Yeah.
Hopefully ISU will get us the paperwork.
And I do have an update for you on that. I talked to Jennifer Steele on Monday, and they said the money will be treated as basically reimbursement. We expend the money, they reimburse us.
That's fine.
Up to the 900,000. So we'll just
This
need
has to be
to,
gone in one fiscal year.
needs to be gone by June
Okay.
30, because it's this fiscal year appropriated. But it didn't sound like they cared what we spent the money on, as
Nope,
long as it's
just
part of the
got gone.
project.
Yep.
And then we do need to do some clarification within the MOU. Any items that are removable can be county assets,
Yep.
but anything that will remain permanent to the building will be an ISU asset.
Yep.
I figured that would be much cleaner.
So we don't
They
bolt
were good for
anything
that.
down.
Hey, why is that wall moving? Don't worry about it.
Let's see, juvenile detention, I did take down their on-call a little bit. Even based on the highest of the last 3 years, they had only spent 115. So I even gave them more than that at 150. So it's more than generous, I believe, as far as that number goes. And then, of course, we can't touch operating, other than we have the abilities to charge a 2% admin fee. And I added the $61,000 for the floor project that the school district is not going to pay for, but we will use reserves for that.
Okay.
We are getting creative with the school district monies to see how they can, since they're not doing this project, what other things they can maybe pay for. Seth is checking with them to see if they'll pay for the meals that we buy from the sheriff's office. That would be $40,000. He was turning in invoices of a couple $100s at a time. I asked him not to do that because that was going to be a nightmare, and I don't know that we could get all the money spent in a year. So if they could do the food and then maybe buy some books or some other items that would be nice that we've not budgeted for, using multi-county
Yeah.
dollars, then, so I have not heard back from him. D6, they're one of our grants, but we asked them to budget, and I'm thinking possibly this year we change them to a special revenue fund, because they're really not using grant dollars like initially they told us. They're having to bill for services. I believe Carrie came to talk to Commissioner Tubby and wanted it to be an enterprise fund.
Yeah.
I'm a little more comfortable with possibly making it a special revenue fund.
Yeah.
And pulling it out of the grants. Revenues will match expenditures, but it would be treated the same as we do snowmobile, waterways, those kinds of funds.
Yeah.
Are you okay if we do that? Or we can make the change later. It's really, you're not going to see a change. We'll take the money out of the grants total and put it in its own department, would be the only
We
change.
still have oversight over it.
That's
Just
fine.
one of those,
Yes.
as long as there's monies that are being brought in, that the auditor's office and the clerk have to oversee, we still have to have permission to,
Well, as long as they're in
as long as
this
it's in this book,
binder,
we have to oversee it and we have to do it. And that's the
and they
whole
have to
thing.
comply with
Yep.
county policy in every way, shape, or form.
Yep. Exactly.
That'll be good change.
I'm good. I'm good with the other ones. I already looked through the other ones and I don't have any heartburn or anything.
We want to talk about capital projects.
Oh, we want that one.
So skip the rest of the grants, because
What
those
page you
are
got?
zeros.
Capital,
Okay, I'll have to tell you, because I don't have page numbers on mine.
capital projects.
It's the first trust page.
91, 90. Capital acquisitions,
Sorry, I put you on the spot. Yeah, capital acquisitions.
91.
So we put 250,000 in here for courthouse projects. You mentioned 6th Street. How much do you think we need in there? I need to do a cash balance, because I do not believe we have expended all of the monies we thought we would this year.
For the bathrooms?
Yeah.
Yeah. 6th Street, it's really gonna depend on what the design and what ends up happening there. Because what's gonna have to happen is you're gonna have to take that street, you're gonna have to dead end, put some sidewalk stuff, some barriers in so people can walk back and forth, some traffic guides. It could be 20 grand, it could be 200 grand. It could all just be dependent upon. The other thing too is Dan was meeting in City Pocatello today about that building. They want us to park behind the building. They want the front of the building to
Enter from the backside.
enter from the back side, which is stupid from the alley, which I'm about ready to just, well, it's the old historic downtown thing. Okay, so, yeah, that applies to us how? Because if you did that on 6th, then the front of the building technically will be on Center Street. So I don't really understand what they're talking about, but we'll see what Dan, but, so your cost on that could be anywhere from a couple, 10, 15, 20, 30,000 to 100,000. So it's really whatever you fit, whatever.
So
Dan
what we
also
can,
mentioned though, sorry Chrissy, go ahead.
I was just to say, we could just change this 250, count that as a courthouse project and put it at
Yeah.
350.
Yeah, just set it 350.
And he'll just do what he can do,
Yeah.
assuming we have the cash.
And it might be something that's, he might only spend 30 grand off of it, and if it's there and it's budgeted, then fine, and it just goes back in and rolls over if we don't use it.
He mentioned that I think it might be able to face 6th if we connect it to the building next door, to the appraiser's office. There's a loophole apparently.
Yes.
Where if we connect it, he can then face 6th.
Yes.
I don't know.
All you need is a little extension, like a breezeway that's like
Yeah.
3 feet wide and 2 feet deep. That's fine, it's connected.
I don't know.
Door. And a locked door, yeah, that's it. And then when we tear 6th Street down, it's still there.
Okay.
So,
So that's
I'm good.
Is there, do you want me to get the cash balance and you can let me know what you want to put in there?
Yeah, I
or
would
do you
just-
just want me to,
Let's put 100,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just put 100,000, like I say, it's.
do you want me to earmark that for 6th Street or just put 350 for courthouse projects?
I would just put the 350.
And when I say courthouse projects, I mean courthouse grounds projects?
Yeah.
I would put the 350 in
It'll
courthouse.
be under
now.
the discretion of,
The other thing Dan's gonna have to
Okay.
do is
Yeah,
we've gotta get the
basically.
sprinkler system redone here because it's falling apart. And
Okay.
that's half the reason we had all the water leaks in it a couple years ago.
Okay, well,
We
then
bubble
he's got
gum.
350,000, he can do whatever he chooses. Most of the other trusts are straightforward. So then, we can talk revenue real quick. And then after we talk revenue, if you want to talk salaries, we can do executive session last. Is that where you want to go?
Just a quick question before we go there. I'm missing, did we take out any like training dollars that we had in the previous year? Or did that get knocked?
For who?
That was-
For how we were doing county training.
Yeah,
Oh, your leadership?
Yeah.
that leadership stuff.
Make sure we
Um,
have
That
it somewhere.
went, did that go from,
You've still got your leadership money.
where's that at? I see.
It should still have that same line item.
under county or commission.
County operations.
County operations.
Okay, so
And
that's, is that,
it's leadership training, 20,000 is still in there.
okay, all right.
There was a random 10,000 in education. No, there was $2,130 in education, and I could not figure out what that was for because everybody had money. So I don't know what that was. It wasn't earmarked for anything, so I just thought maybe it was double budgeted.
Okay,
Okay.
great, thank you.
Okay, so revenue real quick. If you look at your funding spreadsheet, you'll see the other revenue projections, which is basically the fines, fees, sales tax, revenue sharing, all of those items. That's what's in the first column. Property taxes are in the next, and then the fund balance uses. And you should also have the fund balance, the projected fund balance and excess fund balance. And then that's where I determine how much in fund balance of the bottom amount that we can put in here. Never want to use it all,
Yeah.
because then we have rollover plus what you need to hold as targeted fluctuates with the budget. So for example, the general current expense general fund, We have about 4 million in what I think will be excess, and we're using $1.5 million. Forensic pathology, if you go down to that one, it looks negative, because I think we're gonna get, if I put the million, I just put $1 million in there for revenue, and the budget's not that much, but we know we're gonna have to establish a reserve and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's why that one looks, that's why I have a negative in there.
Okay.
And 911, we're trying to build reserves back up, so that's why that has a negative. Those are just basically when you have more revenues than the budget. That's what happens there. If you look at the road and bridge lines, those are a little bit different. We have to take out the money that's going to be reallocated to the cities. So that's why there's an asterisk by the other revenues, is we take about 900,000 out to give to the cities. And it's easier to take it out of that. It really comes out of the property tax ask, but the property tax ask matches my L2 for the property tax request, so I can't reduce it
Okay.
in that line, or that column.
Questions?
No, good.
And you can look at that in a little more detail, and if you've got any questions, if something pops up, just holler at me and I can address it. One revenue item that Commissioner Tubby and I talked about is permits. This year, I budgeted $180,000 in building permits. In '21, we've gotten $600,000. In FY22, we're projected to get $700,000. Terrell has me a little worried because I took it up to $300,000.
You started slowing down.
That's, if the Fed does another point, which they're talking pretty
I heard
seriously
that-
about, it's gonna hit the brakes hard.
I heard that Pocatello's had one building permit pulled for a new house since June 28th. I don't know what Hal's been, but that just might be something that we might just want to leave it the same as last year, maybe, and just observe.
How
Well,
much did we have in there for last year?
last year we received 601,000.
I would just leave it at the 600 if you can.
No, I only took it to 300.
Oh, you only took the
So
300?
you cut it in half from last year.
Well, I only budgeted 180,000 this fiscal year. I am super conservative on those because it
Yeah,
can
we don't
crash
know.
and it can die.
Leave it at the 300 would be,
Yeah.
leave it at the
I'm
300.
okay.
Because
I'm
you're
okay
still
with
going to have
that.
buildings,
Okay.
you're still going to have stuff going on, but it's not going to be,
600,000.
well, what you'll see is you'll see probably remodels, you'll see garage, you'll see houses that normally would just be sold when people go buy a big house. They'll take the house and redo it because they won't be able to, they don't want to change their loan on stuff.
Okay. I'm usually slow in taking revenues up too much because things do ebb and flow so much that I would panic if I took it to 600,000. For example, for our interest, the minute I get cocky and put interest up at 300,000, we get 50,000 in revenue. So that's one of those items that it's just too
Yeah.
fluctuating.
Yeah.
So,
No, I'm glad you talked about that and kept that conservative, because I think that was a smart move on that one.
Yeah.
so that's revenue, unless you have any questions. If you want to talk about
I'm good.
positions or salaries, we can talk about that.
We'll go into executive session to do that, but before we do that, our schedule, and just, let's talk a little bit about it, where we're at, and expectations.
So I believe next week is the next budget meeting, Monday afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, and Thursday afternoon. And then we have August 1st and 2nd. I let Christy know August 2nd, I have a subpoena. So if we could stay away from that day if possible.
And won't
I might be here.
on Monday.
What, you don't want us to try and get you out of subpoena by saying that it's a constitutional requirement that you're here?
You could try it. And I don't even know if they'll call me, but the schedule totally depends on you. If you are comfortable with the clerk's recommendation, minus a few of these changes that I have marked,
Well, I think it'll be too based upon some of the department feedback.
right?
So, on that's, Commissioner Huff won't be here Monday.
Okay.
And I just wondering about pushing back Monday to Tuesday.
Well, we've already got Tuesday, so that works
Yeah.
perfect. Just cancel Monday.
So that you're here.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying
Yeah.
to arrange for.
Yep.
Because I don't see a priority for Monday right now.
No, I don't see anything for Monday
No.
right
That
now.
works.
Unless there's somebody comes in with hair on fire.
Well, then I think we can deal with it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think Tuesday, Thursday, we're set already.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, we're good.
And we'll go to that point
Okay.
right
If-
now.
If we get a mad rash of people that are concerned,
Well, you got this out yesterday.
yeah,
And
Yep.
If you haven't
If we
received a
needed
lot of
to,
responses.
I should be back in Idaho Falls by Monday morning at 10 a.m., so I could be here in the afternoon if we need to.
If we just worry about it Tuesday,
That's
Tuesday,
what I
that's
think.
easier.
That's what I don't see a priority right now.
Okay.
And even if people want to talk, I mean, I don't see people needing as much time as we give Scott today.
right.
no, that was kind of a crazy.
Well, and that was already scheduled, I think, for 2 hours,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not knowing what we would need. And traditionally, we try and give you more time on this schedule than not, because if you wouldn't have liked anything in here, then it would have taken a lot of work.
Yeah.
The more comfortable you are with what the clerk recommends, the less changes we have, the less time we're going to need.
And I think that a little time to digest right now, and that's why I don't really see that we need to talk about personnel right now.
Okay.
I think that that's one of the deals that we all go back and look at and
Because you've
then
got the information.
have come back with a game plan that we're kind of thinking.
Okay.
And I really think that Tuesday would be the next day that we meet, and if everybody's good with that.
I'm
If
good.
possible, it would be ideal to have anybody that gets ahold of Christie come in on Tuesday,
Yeah.
so that we can address those first.
Yeah.
Then Thursday can be a decision day, and then the following Monday can be commission proposed finalizing it.
Yep.
So, yeah, and like I say, we may be doing that on Thursday, but they're all scheduled for budget, so
Right.
they all fit into
Yep, she can just.
what we're doing, and we can make decisions if we need to,
Yep.
because they're all
Yeah.
scheduled that way also.
And I let her know, if she's not sure how much time to give people, she can holler at me. Most people, you could probably give, I think, 15 minutes to a half an hour, depending on what their concern is.
Yeah.
If they don't like one thing,
Well, the
then,
two big departments, well, the three.
Yeah.
We've talked to Scott, we've talked to the sheriff's office, and we've talked to Road and Bridge
Yeah.
or Public Works, so, I mean, those are,
I like where we're at.
those are the big ones.
those would be the
So-
time
So
consuming.
let's plan on Tuesday.
Okay, then I can get,
15,
then,
Thursday.
between now and even on Monday, I can get with Scott to work out the numbers for that enterprise fund. And then we can present that Tuesday.
Okay.
Okay? Super easy.
That's cool.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Like I said, I just didn't want to shorten your time.
Good.